Hello, I'm Kamal Bechkoum, Head of School of Computing and Engineering here at the University of Gloucestershire. I'll be talking to you over the next 20 minutes, maybe half an hour, about some tips with regards to how we keep ourselves as safe as possible online. Perhaps we make a start. Are we all good to go? Katie, Leslie, yes? So as I was saying earlier, I will cover within the next 30 minutes, maybe half an hour, some tips about how we can keep ourselves safe online. And sometimes I call these talks, I call them cyber hack. It's when, not if. And it is because no one can be 100% secure. In fact, I find using the term cybersecurity a little bit misleading because we cannot have cybersecurity 100%. We can be cyber prepared, we can be cyber assured, and more importantly, we can be cyber resilient. So what I'd like to cover within this presentation, I'll tell you very briefly, I'll take 2 or 3 minutes of your time to talk about some of the work we do in cybersecurity at the University of Gloucestershire. Then say a few words about why bother about this. There is a lot of work that has been done about, how you keep yourself safe online and the things that you need to do, the things that you should not do. So why do we have to spend another half hour of our time talking about this? So I'll answer that question. Then I'll spend some time talking about what I call the grand challenge, which is the combination of hyperconnectivity, the data tsunami, and artificial intelligence, and how these have a huge impact on our security online, notwithstanding all the opportunities that these technologies give us, of course. One thing I would like to reinforce or emphasize as part of this conversation today is the fact that cybersecurity is the responsibility of everyone. It's not something we can delegate to a third party, to another party. It has to be the responsibility of everyone, including ourselves, of course. I'll mention where the threat comes from, and we'll conclude with a few tips about how we can make our security better, how we can be cyber prepared. So as an institution involved in the higher education, we are a higher education institution, and therefore you would expect us to be offering undergraduate programs and postgraduate programs in cybersecurity. We do a great deal of research in areas related to blockchain technology, malware, advanced persistent threats, things related to the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning to improve security, but also the physical cyber systems world and security within IoT, or what is called Internet of Things. So we do all that, and as I said, you would expect most universities to be engaged in some related areas in one way or another. We are very proud of the courses that we deliver, as I said, both at undergraduate and postgraduate level, and we work with a lot of businesses, particularly here in Cheltenham and Gloucester. We are very privileged to be surrounded by a number of security firms. There's a cluster of cybersecurity firms working in the area. Of course, there is GCHQ here, so that gives us a huge advantage in trying to tailor the courses and the learning experience to these businesses so that our graduates can find jobs within firms similar to the ones we work with. We are involved in a number of national projects related to cybersecurity. The Institute of Coding is one of them. We are a member of a consortium made of 17 universities in the UK, working on the digital skills agenda for the next 5 to 10 years, with a specific emphasis on how we make software secure by design, rather than we develop the software and then we think about security as an afterthought. So that's a major national project which we are involved in. There is something special happening in the county of Gloucestershire, and in Cheltenham in particular, where our labs are and where our campus is for computing and engineering. There's this Golden Valley development which will be home to Cyber UK. You can think of it as a something similar to the Silicon Valley, although we don't want to create that comparison, but it will be, Cheltenham will be home to a major cyber development that will have a huge impact, not just on the county or the country, but will have a worldwide impact as well. And we are involved in the development of the early stages of this major project. Why bother? Why should you, log into this live living room lecture to listen to me talking to you about cybersecurity? If I were to summarize it in one sentence, I would say, because in cybersecurity there is no graduation ceremony. It's a continuous process. It's not an event where you do things and you say, okay, now I am cyber secure. No, you can't. First of all, you can never be cyber secure. Not even GCHQ can be cyber secure. Not even the best security firm in the world can be cyber secure. Not even you or I can be cyber secure. We can improve our security, as I said. We can be prepared. We can be assured, and we can be more resilient. And that, in order for us to be any one of these and the combination of all these three, it's not something that can be complete. One of the reasons why it cannot be complete is because the threat landscape is an ever-changing one. So every day we find a different type of threat coming from a different area. So there is that need for continuous cyber preparedness. And yes, yesterday's war is still important, but we must look ahead to what we will be facing tomorrow. Because yesterday all the techniques we learned about how to make ourselves safer online are still applicable, but remember, new technologies are coming up, and the hackers, the criminals are using these technologies to fool us sometimes, to fall into their traps. Just to give you an idea, and I don't want to bore you with the statistics, just to reinforce the point that cyber attacks are on the increase. Over 4.1 billion records were breached in the first half of 2019 only. This is according to a research conducted by Veronis. It is estimated that over 71% of all breaches were financially motivated, but there are about 25% which were motivated by espionage. Some 50% of the breaches are from hacking, about 30% from malware, and phishing seems to be the favorite method used to get into our systems. In fact, about 94% of phishing attacks are delivered by email. What does that mean? It means when you receive an email from someone that you think is your friend or your colleague, to be suspicious in the world, in the digital world, is not a bad thing. In fact, it should be the default thing. When you receive an email that's asking you to click on a link in the email or to download an attachment, think twice. If the email is coming from outside the organization, then you definitely need to think twice, because that email may not be what you think it is. And if you click on that link on your email or download the attachment, you will be downloading malware on your system, on your machine. And that malware will be controlling your machine depending on what they want from you. It could be, they want to sit, the malware will sit in the network for months, sometimes years, just to understand certain ways of working, to capture some of the information, internal information, and then decide to attack when the time is opportune for the malware to do so. And when they do, it could be a ransomware, so they could be locking up your entire system. You have access to no systems within your machine, no data, and they will ask for a ransom. If you don't pay that ransom, they threaten not to give you access to all the information that you have on your machine. Or it could be something else. A couple of years ago, some of my colleagues fell for a phishing attack that used my name to suggest that the email is coming from me to my colleagues in the university. And of course, elements of speed and tiredness sometimes, they play a big role in people falling in the trap. First of all, urgency. So the email is asking for something that needs to happen and needs to happen now. Okay, in that case, in the case of the phishing email that my colleagues received, as if the email was from me, it was purporting to be from me, they said, I am in a meeting, hi, I am locked in a meeting and I forgot completely about a birthday of a very, very dear person to me. Could you please buy me XY from, I think it was an online store. And of course, this colleague of mine, and two of them fell for it, they were very tired when that email landed in their inbox. There is an urgency, they need to do it and do it now. And it's from Kamal, I have to do it and do it now. They didn't even look at the email address. If they looked at the email address, yes, my name is there, but there is something dodgy about that email address. Have I ever asked them to do something like this from me? Why didn't they question that? Because it's urgent and they were tired, they wanted to do something for Kamal and they fell for it. They lost a bit of money and they're lucky they didn't lose their credit card credentials, etc., etc. So when you receive an email that looks too good, it's probably too good. And the default position should be that you are suspicious. Don't be concerned about being suspicious. So that's why we should bother. And this is getting worse because of what I call the grand challenge. Hyperconnectivity. There are billions of devices now connected together in this so-called Internet of Things. And these devices are exchanging information about and data about you and me, about our businesses, about our families, etc. So you've got, we are all very happy to be able to sit somewhere, maybe hundreds of miles away from our home, and look at our home using the camera which is connected to the internet. That's brilliant. Nonetheless, that camera is connected to the web. And if that camera is not secure, it's a weak link through which, hackers could get into the system. And one way to secure it is to change its default password, of course. Many people don't bother about changing these devices, the default password that comes with these devices. So some estimates put the number of connected devices to 25 billion by the end of this year. Others think it could be up to 75 billion. So you can think of all the data that this connectivity is giving us. In fact, every day today, we create something like 2.5 quintillion bytes of data. What's a quintillion? It's 1 followed by 18 zeros, or 1 followed by 30 zeros. If you go to 18 zeros is the US metric system, and 30 zeros is the British metric system. Whatever system you use, it's a lot of zeros, it's a lot of data. So much that 90% of the data today has been created in the last 2 to 3 years. 90% of the data that we have today has been created in the last 2 to 3 years. And that's because of that hyper connectivity and all the information that's being shared in the digital world. And then the third element of the grand challenge is AI. So we've got hyperconnectivity, a data tsunami, and then AI. Artificial intelligence will do a lot of good, of course. I'd like to think that the work we do within the university and other good places in the world is about using AI for a good thing. So more than simply connecting humans with devices, the next stage in connectivity will inevitably include humanized interfaces. Interfaces that understand us, understand our needs, understand our behavior, and help us accordingly. And these are bots. So that's good. That's a good use of AI. A not so good use of AI is when AI is used to use that understanding of who we are to create better phishing emails, for example. So when you get a phishing email, it really looks the real thing. Unlike the ones we received, which if you look at them in more detail, you realize they're not really that sophisticated and you can just ignore them. But with AI, they have bots, in the web, looking at our behavior, our data exchange, etc. And they form a view about our needs, our desires, our friends, our families, our holidays, all sorts of things about us. So when they write a phishing email, it looks really good. It looks the real thing. And you can fall for it because of the automatic way with which data is gathered. So cybersecurity, because of these reasons, is not a status, is not an event. It's a continuous process, and no one is immune. We can all fall for it, and if we didn't, it's a question of when, not a question of if, as I said earlier. This is not a scaremongering thing, it's an awareness. We all need to have that basic level of awareness when it comes to cybersecurity. Where does the threat come from? Of course, there are criminals who are after your money. There are hacktivists who just want to make a point. There are competitors who are after commercial data and espionage. There are hostile states who get involved in hacking for all sorts of reasons. And there are insiders. We can think of ourselves as insiders when it comes to our own systems, because we are the ones that create problems for ourselves because of our behavior, because of the way we work with our machines and the way we handle our data. But insiders, if someone is working for an organization and either by mistake they click on the wrong link, or the boss annoyed him or annoyed her and they decided to do something nasty by sharing information that they should not share, or because they have insiders' information, they can do a lot of harm internally. So these are the 5 major sources of threat, but I would like us to focus also on us, because we can't control the sources and what they do. We can control our behavior and what we can do to make ourselves resilient and prepared. And that's the key really to what I'd like to leave with you today, because 95% of breaches are caused by human error. 95%. It's not technology. Technology, yes, sometimes technology fails us, but often it's a human mistake that led to a breach. So what are the key or the top tips I'd like to leave you with to be cyber prepared? One, you personally have to be the human firewall. And if you are a business or organization, you need to develop the community, develop a culture where everyone is a human firewall. So avoid suspicious websites, avoid suspicious links, make backups, don't use networks you don't know or you don't own. For example, when you are in a public space and we are tempted to use Costas or Starbucks or airports Wi-Fi system, yes, fine, but don't use that Wi-Fi system for sensitive transactions, for example. If you are checking your bank account details, don't use public Wi-Fis because they are easily hackable using some very simple tools. Update your systems and devices regularly. Don't delay it. Don't, oh, I'm busy. I will do this later. It just takes one mistake, and resist that temptation to be lax, because even one wrong move can be devastating. And remember, security is not an event. It's a continuous process. Have a plan for when things go wrong. And the last thing I'd like to leave with you is that security is the business of everyone, with the citizen being the first line of defense. I leave you with those thoughts, and thank you for listening and for bearing with the conversation until now. I'll take any questions if there are any. Any questions? I can't see any on the questions, comments, and this is not a threat, it's an opportunity. If you don't have questions, that's absolutely fine. Unless if I'm not seeing where the questions are, just double check. Mark Ferguson. Hi Mark. We're constantly on the defensive from scammers and hackers other than the police or authorities. Do you think universities should ever become leaders in disrupting or fighting back against the bad guys? Or is it just too big a task? That's a very, very good question. Thank you, Mark. Do I think personally that we should be disrupting? You will be amazed how much offensive work takes place, particularly in organizations such as GCHQ. We tend to be thinking about how do we make our environment as safe as possible, and that doesn't mean we shouldn't look at what the scammers or the criminals are doing so that we can be one step ahead as far as technology, and I mentioned AI, So why can't we be ahead of them so they can't get to us before we reach their level of expertise? Because they have time and they have a lot of resources, and resources include both financial as well as grey matter. So we shouldn't underestimate their network and how they work. Whether we should go and disrupt them, personally my view is not our business, but I'm open to being convinced otherwise. I think we should focus on doing our job as universities, and our job as universities is education and research. Part of it should be developing some of the algorithms that colleagues within specialist organizations such as GCHQ and other security firms will be using for offensive work. But as an institution, we will not get involved in offensive strategies. I hope that answers your question, Mark. Is there anything you can do if you suspect you've been hacked? Oh my God, yes. It depends what your suspicion is about. I'm afraid sometimes it's a bit too late if you haven't prepared. Remember cyber preparedness? If you haven't prepared, you haven't done anything, when it hits the fan, you left open. About 4 weeks ago, a colleague of mine, a friend of mine, contacted me saying that he's been hacked. It's a ransomware attack, and they blocked all his servers and asked for huge amounts of money. What can I do? Can I, find a way of getting access to my servers? Unfortunately, once you get to that stage, it's very difficult. It's then into negotiation and discipline and other stuff. But there isn't much you can do to have access to your servers now that they have been locked with encrypted data that only the hacker has access to. So what you need to do is, before that, what systems I have in place to make sure that doesn't happen, and should it happen, I should already have planned what I need to do. And I won't leave it until it hits the fan. So it depends what the suspicion is about, to answer your question, Leslie. Any other questions, colleagues? Friends, colleagues? I don't have a list. I can't see a list of who is online. If no questions, then all that remains for me to say is to thank you for your participation. Stay safe and God bless. All the best. Bye-bye now.